amended speed limit bylaw and looking at amending the 2013 bylaw. I'm chairing it, Pat Seymour, Councillor Pat Seymour, with Councillor Larry Foster and Deputy Mayor Councillor Forrihinger as part of the panel. I just ask for any declarations of interest. Does either of the panel or any of the panel have any interest? No?
Well, I must declare I'm a resident of Kaiti Beach.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. That's noted. I don't think that precludes you. So we move to our report, which is report 22-140. I welcome any listeners who are listening on Zoom, and we open this bylaw. I'll ask council officers to give a background and an introduction to the process of the where we've got to today. So for clarity, thank you. My apology, I should have introduced Ms. Middleton as the reporting officer and Ms. Jo Noble. Thank you.
Thank you. So originally we started reviewing our bylaw, our 2013 bylaw, with the intent of making a speed management plan, which was the new direction that nationally we're moving towards, to align our speeds with safe and appropriate speeds as determined by experts of kotahi. And to get that alignment nationally across New Zealand. So but safe and appropriate speeds coming from Australia and overseas as well. So there's a lot of advice around what those are. We began engaging about these about a year ago, and we struggled, I think, with the way we consulted with people. I think we always, whenever we talk about speed with the public, we kind of get a backlash. People think it's something else and not them that's contributing to accidents on our roads. Anyway, I won't get into that, but we had a broad brush approach to change all our speeds at that stage, and because of the responses that we got, we pulled back to making those changes only to 12% of our network. So this is what we've consulted on in April this year. We got 154 submissions. The majority supported our changes of speeds to speed limits on beaches and around schools. But we still had a little bit of opposition to our changes to speeds at 150. They were quite targeted. The speeds we thought we chose were specific speeds that were concerns to people that we consulted with in the community. We have township planning people that we talk with, and also the responses we got had specific concerns. So really the 12% includes a lot of those sort of specific issues around the place. And anyway, so what we came to decide was that we would like to stick with what we proposed, even after consultation. The law has now changed, and so that there is actually no longer a bylaw system. Councils can't just do bylaws to set speed limits. It's actually done under a national speed limit rule, which speed limit register, which is in place. And so if we get approval for these changes, we'll be implementing them over time and into this new speed register. And that's a process that we do with Waka Kotahi. It's all new, but yeah, we can get into that straight away. And once it gets approved and put into the register, that is when it becomes the legal instrument that police can enforce and make infringements on people. Am I making sense?
Thank you. Can I just ask a supplementary question, because I think that's what everyone's interested in. Have you developed a schedule of the process, of the time frame for implementing any changes, not prejudging what changes there might be? Have you established any timeframes yet?
We've got we've done trials of school speeds around some schools. We're actually trialing some at the moment, and so they're probably going to be the first that we'd hit. And then after that, I think we would align it with some of the work that we're doing around, for example, township planning jobs that are happening, to align with basically what is out there. But otherwise, no, we haven't published a list and a time frame yet. That's something that we would get straight into.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we understand the process. We welcome the first submitter and welcome other submitters joining us. So we have Mrs. McCallum. We don't have, normally with respect, we have a schedule of which number the submitter is. So good council officers like to refer us to the page so that we can review. It's in the schedule, but the schedule is quite, and it does make council panels task difficult when they don't seem to be numbered. Just bear with us. We just have to find your submission because we do have pages and pages of them. We'll just take a moment to find Mrs. McCallum's submission. Welcome, ladies, from the other submitters.
Handwritten, was it?
It still should appear on the whole, on the full sheet.
Page 29. Page 29.
Okay. No, thank you very much. We do have it, Ms. McCallum. So thank you very much. Over to you, and we look forward to hearing what you have to tell us. Thank you.
Te ata kai katoa ko Jeanie McCallum, tuku ingoa. And thank you firstly for giving me the opportunity to speak to my submission. We, and when I refer to we, it is my husband and I who have started this, but also we have the support of every person living in these two roads that we're going to talk about. We thought the changes to the speed limits would be an opportunity to bring up this particular subject. So if you look at your number one sheet, the roads that we're talking about are Bermingham Road and Kaimoi Road. They're out at Patutahi. As you can see, the highlighted areas are the present 100k limits. The two red circles are where the present 50k signs are, which are going into the village. Our proposal is to get the 50-kilometre sign down to the south end of the road, which is where the pink circles are. If you look at number 2, who are we? On Bermingham Road, between present and proposed 50k signs, there are 11 vehicle exits and entrance. They're rural, horticulture and residential, and this also includes the AstroTours site, which is run by our well-known Gisborne astronomer John Drummond. He has 2 regular, well, as long as the weather's good, nights where he presents. I help him sometimes in a capacity as a local, and he had 25 people there the other day, so the car exits and entrance are fairly big. Also on both Kaimoi and Bermingham Road, there's the entrance and exits of Da Costa Enterprises. They have 2 huge areas of hectare in apple orchard, and there is a huge assortment of vehicles, worker vehicles, heavy trucks, trucks, tractors, spray units. In full production, these sites are really, really busy. On Kaimoy Road there are, and I've got 15 in here, but I actually drove it this morning because I wasn't sure of my number, and there's actually 19 exit and entrance ways on Kaimoy Road. Kaimoy Road is a single lane.
Is that the straight road?
The Kaimoy Road is the one along the windy one.
The windy one,
Yeah,
thank you.
so it's also a single lane, and we would really like that reduced. We also, if you could look at number 3, please, why we feel strongly about this. Kevin and I have lived on Bermingham Road for 20 years. We, talking to a neighbour, the 50k sign into the village was probably put there about 35, maybe 40 years ago, which is when there was no development on either of those roads. So things have changed. During the time that we've lived there, we've witnessed many close calls on the stretch of road, and it, honestly, I'm saying this truly, it's only sheer luck that there hasn't been a huge injury or a fatality. There are two families living on both roads with young children. We see that the NZTA moved to reduce speed limits around Tairāwhiti or GDC, as I've learned from our previous speaker. It's an opportunity to get these dangerous segments of road made safer by simply shifting the signage as we proposed. Everyone on both roads supports this proposal. I've spoken to them all verbally. I don't have written proof, but everyone has supported it. We've often put in, tentative sort of, how can we get this changed? I was told about 3 years ago that we can't because we have to wait for NZTA to, put a proposal in. It wasn't a formal one, it was just a cordial over the desk. So if you turn to page 4, the final one there is on the top right-hand corner, there's a paddock that's marked with a black line, and then the one opposite that, that's actually the amount of apple hectare that Da Costa Enterprises have, and they, both Julie and Mark, are very, very pro getting these speed limits reduced. So thank you for listening, and I'll take any questions.
That's very clear. Thank you very much, Callum. That really makes it clear, and really appreciate the paperwork that supports it. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your submission.
Sorry, hang on.
No, thank you very much for your submission. I don't have any questions, but I would like to hear council's response at the end of these proceedings in regards to this.
Well, in case Mrs. McCallum's not still here, can we ask council officers to indicate the process while this is outside of the specifics? It is a very relevant matter. Are you able to make comment, Ms. Noble, on what council will do with this information should the committee support the process going forward?
I'd just like to thank Pat for that. I'd really appreciate it, because the people will be asking me how'd it go.
So this wasn't a matter included in the consultation document that went out, but if you were so minded, you could direct council staff to include it in the traffic speed management plan that is now being developed post this bylaw process. And then that will get fed into the speed register and implemented over time as resourcing allows, because there is a certain amount of work included in changing speed limits. We can't do everything all at once.
Can I just ask the question, over time? Can you give me some indication of that, please?
So I'm not personally responsible for the budgets. So we set our budgets every 3 years. So there will be a budget that we have for this year and the next financial year. And I don't know where at the moment your particular road would fit within that scheme. I would say that every 3 years we review our budgets and our expenditure in our long-term plan, and that's a place where residents can let the council know, actually, you need to do more in this area and you need to move faster. So, for example, if your road still hadn't had the speed limits changed by 2024, for example, I'm not saying that's the case, then that would be your time to make sure that council knew that this was a really significant issue that you needed to move on faster.
That would be a second opportunity.
Yes,
I was
sort of
saying. This is the
another
first
opportunity.
opportunity, and there's potentially, I can't prejudge the decision that we'll make, but if we put it forward now, then it will go into the work plan for the time being. But Ms Noble has just made it clear the budgets are set, but that doesn't mean that some priorities don't happen. Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Mrs McCallum, for coming and presenting to us. No, we appreciate the community's involvement and the interest that you bring to it. And it is by feedback from the community that council can make its decisions. Not always as fast as the community would like, but that certainly is how decisions are made.
It's an area, the whole.
Mm. Right, yes. Oh dear, oh dear. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Our second submitter is Mr. Donnelly. Would you like to come forward, Mr. Donnelly? Thank you very much.
That's on page 34 of your agenda.
The submission is on page 34. Kia ora. Welcome, Hemara.
Yeah, I'm here to actually submit,
When you, yes, feel free to sit or stand, and you need to press the button for the red light to come on. Thank you. You don't have to speak too close to it, but it's just so those who are listening at home can hear as well. Thank you.
now, I'm here to speak to make sure that, what I was unheard for when, Ming was actually in, sitting as mayor, that I was, I put in, a whole lot of paperwork to submit data bars on Ranfurly. I think Andy would know that. Ranfurly and Incliff Road, where we're now getting more visitors from Napier and Hastings from the mongrel mob. And that actually, I know the police are matter, but police can only go so far. But having judder bars when they're doing wheelies and burnouts in the middle of the roads, intimidating the hell out of the kids, that's police here, but we've got judder bars in some of those places, mainly on the long straight ones between Cambridge Terrace and Ranfurly Road, which they use as a racetrack, and even boy races do it as well. From the top of the hill, Cotty Hill, down all the way to Incliff, because it's a straight. They try and beat each other. One day, somebody's house is going to be smashed. Somebody's going to have no life. We can build another house. We can't build another life.
You have submitted to us around keeping the 50K.
Yeah.
zone.
Well, we all know that's not going to happen when you've got some substance between alcohol and drugs that are on the street today. That sign is going to mean nothing to people who can read but refuse to read.
Thank you.
And I'm here to make sure. Another thing I'm here for is the footpaths that have been widened on Waineru Road. My one's between Incliff Road, the top of Incliff Road, and all the way around to Cambridge, coming past my house, we're in front of the roundabout, have all gone like this. And the mailman is using my grass, which I take a lot of pride in my house, to actually drive and make wheel marks. The bikes are that wide, the footpaths that wide.
Are you telling us the angle on the footpath has moved? since
No, it's gone like
it was
this.
built like that, or it's
It's gone-
moved?
No, it was straight, it was level when we got there in 1960.
All right.
And over the year of 1960, between 1960 to now, even to the year 2000, it started to go like this. And I brought that also to the attention of the council, and they said, well, we haven't got, the last words I heard out of Ming's mouth, we haven't got the financial situation for the kind of area at the moment. And I said, well, that's right, Ming, I'm used to hearing all this. I'll come back again in 3 months, 6 weeks.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Do you have a question, Councillor Foster?
Yeah, thanks, Hemara. How often have you rung the police on these issues when?
Every time I see a person who's come out of the house of number 64, Ranfurly, and also just opposite 52 Ranfurly. Now, I've rung them, so as soon as I see a lot of cars there, two of them have got no number plates, I hit the button straight away.
Have any response?
And it's not 869, 8200, it's 111.
Yeah. And then what response have you had from those calls?
They came around, but by the time they came around, those guys had picked up what they came there for and left. And when they left, they had a police chase between Ranfurly and the turn off to the old freezing works. By then by the time the cops got there, it was hard to say, which way they turned because they had just disappeared. They went into an alleyway to a house, to show the police where they are. But this can't keep going on because I've got kids that go to school, because as I said, I can build you a house if I smashed it, but I can't bring your bloody kid back if you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Do you have any questions,
Tēnā koe te whananga o tō kōrero mai ki a mātou. Thanks very much for your kōrero, te whananga. Don't have any questions. I did want to actually just make this statement to staff about the footpath that Mr. Donnelly had mentioned, and that maybe being aligned to our programs of work that we have coming up, and just some kind of report back to council. It's probably separate to this.
Yeah, we will do that, and we'll make sure it's logged on the system as well as a request for service.
Awesome.
Thank you.
One thing I did say to the mailman about Thursday, when, just after that we had that heavy rain, I said, "Excuse me, bro, are you going to come back and repair this in the summertime when the hole's there?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm not. Why are you riding on me?" He said, "Because I'm doing my job." I said, "What's wrong with a pedal bike? Yeah, this is a motorbike. It's got 3 wheels and it's wide on the footpath." See, that's not my problem. I said, "Have a nice day."
Thank you. I can copy from Councillor Forrading because I know he got it. But Ranfurly, and what was the other street you named?
Cambridge, Ranfurly, and Oxford. The top of Oxford is where a lot of them come from as well, because they go up there to buy their drugs. Well, I don't know what else they go to, but when they're coming down intoxicated. And when I call the police, well, as I said, it takes because we've got very little police for a whole lot of crimes that have been committed.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate the interest you take, and I know that you've always been involved in council and giving advice to Mingham when he was our mayor. So thank you very much for coming.
Well, talking to me is like talking to the bull.
Thank you.
Throw the ball. Cool.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Ms. Birmingham is our next submitter. Thank you. And that is on page 27 of our papers. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for bringing us through the written material. That's really helpful. Just whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Morena all. I'd like to thank council staff for your considerations and well-meaning intentions in regards to the protecting of Makarori Beach and Kaiti beaches and all-encompassing issues that come with that. It's it's obviously a big area of concern for all of us. With the plans, I didn't bring my road plans. Can you please tell me, is this just Makarori Beach and Kaiti Beach we're talking about putting to 20k, not all the town beaches?
Yeah, it's just Makarori and Kaiti Beach at the moment.
So why were not all beaches considered?
It's more the implementation over budget. So and just to trial those 2 areas, see how it goes.
Okay, I've personally been contacting council since November 2008, when my children were young, on this issue. And in principle back then, it was noted that there was going to be a prohibition on vehicles on beaches with exceptions. However, obviously this has not happened. So where have we gone, in my view, backwards? 2008 prohibition, now we're going to 20 Ks. In the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of vehicles on beaches. We've seen a significant increase on people coming to our district, which is awesome. It's awesome for all of us. It brings a lot. However, we still see vehicles on the beaches, tormenting seals, driving with children, hanging off the side, with people on trays of utes, abusing beach walkers, driving over the dunes, extremely close to people sitting on the beach, riding unregistered vehicles, disrespecting the dunes and the mud, speeding, driving dangerously. I could go on. Is this what we really want in our district? I don't think so. Our community, this is Makarori I'm talking about here, mainly Makarori, but however, there are other people in our community and people that holiday makers that come here that believe the reducing of the speed and advertising the speed allowed on our beaches to 20 K is actually inviting more vehicles onto the beach. Have any of you sat on the beach at Makarori one day in the sun, maybe Kairi as well, and you get a SUV drive up and sit in front of you? I mean, that's how ridiculous. You and previous councils have spent a lot of time and money and resources achieving very little, I feel. Vehicles will still have access to the beaches, so you may as well leave the speed limits as they are instead of wasting everyone's time and money in making this small change that will change little and highly likely let it continue to get worse. Is this what you really want? We are now in 2022, when our environment and the climate change are of real importance to everyone. A major part of this is coastal areas being eroded. Dunes are constantly being eroded all over the country due to weather. However, you as council remain endorsing further erosion by allowing any vehicle on the beach. Is this what you want? No driving on the beach, with exceptions, would mean no one would constantly be called on to regulate activity on the beaches. And you wouldn't require bollards along the beachside, as it would be clear cut. Driving is prohibited. Currently, police and GDC staff are constantly being contacted due to people breaking laws that are in place. Both these organisations are busy. Staff are already under pressure, yet this is what we have to do to live in a safe environment. Is this what you really want? There are sealed roads and dune tracks along Makarori and Kairi Beach, so there is no need for vehicles to drive along the beach unless they are an emergency vehicle or launching a boat. It only takes, like the previous speaker, it only takes one vehicle, one child, one adult, one seal for there to be an accident that we can't roll back time on. Is this what you really want? As I alluded to when I first came in, we're not only talking about Makarori and Kairi here, we're talking about our whole beaches right up the coast. You've done amazing amounts of work on town beaches, Wainui Beach, yet you still hold something against the other beaches around the town. Why are you not acting on no vehicles being allowed on the beaches? Too afraid? Don't you want to protect the environment? Don't you want to protect wildlife? Currently, so many bylaws are being violated by allowing vehicles to drive across the dunes and onto our beaches. We are the kaitiaki of Tairāwhiti and are currently doing an average job of this when it comes to our beaches. Some councils where you're not allowed to drive on beaches include Auckland, Dunedin, Tauranga, Whakatane, and Clutha's in the mix now. Why not Gisborne? We have a chance to change this bylaw now to prohibit vehicles on beaches. Make a stand.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that is really clear. And I appreciate that you have been on this mahi for many, many years. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is a lot of it's repetitive, I know,
Right.
but we feel very strongly about it. And Larry, you know what it's like. And it's gone on way too long.
Councillor Florey, have you got any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. You're right, consistent messaging from the Makarori community. I am interested to hear from staff the wider rationale about why we're not banning, why that's not part of this. Why that's not part of this.
Yeah.
Should we listen to all of the submitters from Makarori, because there are
Oh,
several
yeah,
other
you're true. We
submitters
have got
here,
a
and then
collective,
we'll
yeah.
invite, because then the Makarori submitters can stay, and you will have heard evidence from other submitters, and then council officers could give us a response to that. And I'd be interested in a more formal response as to what would the implications were if the committee chooses to extend it beyond those beaches, because we have had submissions from and requests from Hemara particularly. But I'll go to Councillor Foster. Do you have a question? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kay, for your submission and your commitment to this particular role that you're doing. My question is, do you get beasts or carcasses dumped on your beach regularly?
Yes, we do. We have one at the moment, which I put a request into council to have moved, but I believe it's still there, which is really disgusting.
Is that from people, not by flooding, it's by someone?
No, it's in the dunes, actually.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's,
Yeah, there's furniture, there's all sorts.
I know you get furniture.
regular party beach. Yeah, my other question, have you seen an increase this winter as opposed to last winter of vehicles on beaches and the abuse that you're talking about?
Yeah, there's constant. I think, you know, like our population's growing, people have moved back, there's gang issues, there's a lot of issues in our area. And, you know, Makarori's the first flat beach out of town, and it's so close. Now, you know, people don't see it as a long way out anymore. It is so close to town. So, yeah, of course there's interest. There's people there every day. There's
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Can I just ask one question? So if this does stay at 20, I know you say that at any stage you can change that. But what is the process of changing that? You know, how long would that be to change?
So I think to remove or ban vehicles from our beaches, we wouldn't be doing it under the speed limits bylaw and the speed management plan. It would be a separate, either a bylaw or a resource management plan process. And I can talk to this more once we've heard from all the Makarori residents.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Mrs. Busby, we look forward to hearing from you next on the list, and that's page 27. Thank you for your submission. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much, Mrs. Busby, for the paperwork. It's really helpful.
Okay, so good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The proposal put forward by the council is for a 20-kilometre zone on Makarori and Kaiti beaches. The last time we were here, our submission was for no vehicles on the beach. This hasn't changed. Surely by saying you can only go 20 kilometres signifies that it is okay for everyone in the vehicle to use the beach. How is this going to be policed? Also, there are no designated access points to stop the destruction of the dunes. The main road, in fact, all roads have rules and regulations that people adhere to. but the beach is a recreational area, families picnicking, relaxing, playing and walking on the beach. Do they need the added hazards of vehicles on the beach? You just don't hear vehicles because of the noise of the sea. Why is it okay for Wainui Beach to have a sign put up by GDC saying no vehicles on the beach, but not at Makaroori and KT? Refer to photo A. The first one there.
Thank you.
We, the residents of Makaroori, have been for years repeating ourselves, saying the same thing, saying no vehicles on the beach in all our submissions. You have seen the photos of the damage incurred on the dunes of Makaroori and all the hazard complaints, including rogue motorbikes roaring up and down the beach, causing violations of speed and extreme noise on a recreational beach and in the community. Refer to photos B, C, and D. These photos would have been taken in the last month. We were away the weekend of the 11th, so there are no photos for that weekend. There was also motocross racing on the 31st of May, so it has been every weekend for the last 5. We had a friend on the 5th of June walking down at Tuahini Point and was wondering what the noise was. So you can appreciate what the noise might have been at Makaroori if it could be heard at Tuahini Point. We have some confidence and common sense to implement rules and regulations for the police to ensure consequences are upheld. Why is it so difficult for council and councillors to make a rational decision on the bollards and vehicles of Makaroori Beach for its protection and safety? Thank you, Richard and Robin Busby.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the photograph to support your submission. Councillor Foster, do you have questions?
Yeah, I think we've been down this road.
Councillor Corrigan, do you have any questions? I will ask council officers to address the particular latter, some of your questions when they respond to all of the Makaroori questions at the end.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for the photographs. That
Yeah.
was really helpful, including the winery one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your submission. And Mr. Sandy Ball, and Sandy is on page 20 of our paperwork. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Ball. Mrs. Seymour's quite formal in here, so welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Seymour, Mr. Farhanger, and Councillor Larry Foster, staff. Good morning. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity of having my say in this matter. I've been involved with it for quite some time, and the chance to put our views to the council, much appreciated. My name's Sandy Bull, Alistair Dawson, Sandy. My submission is in support of the Makaroori residents. The residents have been attempting to get bylaws and speed limits on the Makaroori Beach and environs addressed for over, I have said 3 years, it's a lot longer than that actually. I know that similar problems occur on the Kaiti Beach. Other concerns relate to the serious damage of the foreshore and dunes by vehicles which contravene local regional council regulations, sections of the Wildlife Act 1953 and the Conservation Act 1989. Danger to other beach users from vehicles is of great concern to the residents. I disagree with the proposal to set new speed limits on Makaroori and Kaiti beaches of 20 kilometres per hour. These beaches have been replaced as roads and highways, for example, Makaroori by State Highway 35. Except for official purposes, police, surf life safety, danger, etc., Gisborne District Council officers in the course of their work, there should be no vehicles allowed on beaches. With respect, I suggest that the antisocial and illegal behaviour which is occurring on Makarori would not be tolerated on Gisborne's other beach reserves. Enforcement of council bylaws is an essential requirement and are notable by their absence. I make the point that officers of the council can be empowered to carry out official duties on beaches, etc. Also, honorary persons, honorary rangers, local residents can be empowered through council to carry out enforcement work. I make the point perhaps that no regulations are of any value at all unless they are enforced. I realise that police can be called in and have been called in at Makarori on many occasions, but they obviously say we've only got a limited amount of time. So thank you for the opportunity, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to hopefully front up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ball, because I know that you too have been keen to see the protection of our 4 dunes and Makarori in particular, but also Hemara and other beaches in the district for years. So thank you for persisting. It's important. Do you have any questions, Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for a good submission there. What evidence do you have of any bird life that has been disrupted on the dunes? I mean, Kaiti Beach, we've had obviously dead kororo, penguins and stuff from different activities, but is there any evidence of a lot of dead, have you seen dead birds or something that has happened from being run over or the abuse of vehicles on the beach?
It's a fair question. The protection given to the beaches and dunes, particularly under the Wildlife Act, the nesting period is probably starting about July through into the summer. We do have evidence of those species occurring on the beach. I haven't got any evidence of birds being killed, but we do know that seals, which are again absolutely protected species, with most of the seabirds. And in fact, the council have a list which sets out the threatened species which occur in the Gisborne district. And from time to time, New Zealand documents vary since penguins, white-fronted terns, and others nest on particularly on the dunes, because obviously under the tide mark in the dunes. And the dunes at Makarori, and we have a lot of photographs of the damage and visual accounts of the damage on the beaches, which on the dunes, obviously, apart from the disturbance of the vegetation, threatens the habitats of protected species and wildlife.
So has there been any documentation of the decline of bird life and wildlife on the Makarori? I mean, over the years, has there been a significant decline in wildlife from the activity of human?
Fair to say that any records of over a period of time would have been and should have been kept by initially the Internal Affairs Department of Wildlife, Internal Affairs Department, or Conservation Department. Those records may be available. I do have a copy of some of the protected species, but here, if I quote from the Gisborne District Council Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan. This is dated 2006. Regionally and nationally rare or threatened species found in the Gisborne District. Birds, and I've highlighted 4 species there, which occur and can occur at all our beaches, particularly the nested scene. Banded dotterel. Their threat status is chronically threatened, nationally critical, and a gradual decline. The northern little blue penguin, which occurs right through the coast, and nests, Karaturi, mixed head are 2 examples. Chronically threatened, gradual decline. White front tern, chronically threatened, gradual decline. And northern New Zealand dotterel, at risk and sparse. So those are just a few of the, and those are on our local council threatened list, and they do occur right along the beach. And in fact, we've got the marine reserve further along, which is very heavily monitored. We have, if I go a wee bit south to Next Head, where we have the rarest gull in the world nesting at Next Head. So probably if that answers the question, Larry, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
But supplementary to that, would you suggest that the volume of traffic on Makarori Beach would be a deterrent to birds nesting there anyway?
Absolutely. That would be, and in the same breath become people disturbing wildlife with vehicles or whatever, really, particularly vehicles. It's an offence, and in some cases, fines of up to $20,000. I probably get a bit carried away because I spent quite a large part of my life working for the Internal Affairs Wildlife Service, and the weekends and holidays we were expected to be out chasing pigeon shooters and persons illegally taking game and wildlife and so on. I'm a bit
Thank
giddy
you.
about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. This is not normal, Ms. Birmingham, but if you come up and use the speaker, I'll allow you to speak. You sure? I mean, I will allow questions after council officers have responded, but it's always better that they respond to all of the Makarori submissions rather than one by one. So I will allow a question or a supplementary after that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To council officers, are you in a position to respond now to the question around why only 20k and why council was not bold enough to ban it consistent with Wainui Beach? And second one, which we'll ask you later, so we might as well hear it now. Why have we not determined it would be banned across all beaches except for emergency services and inverted commas? So that would cover other formal requirements to be on the beach and maybe at launching. Thank you.
So you may recall this was discussed at some length through the traffic and parking bylaw. So we do have provisions within that bylaw, and as you were on the hearing committee, I'm sure you remember there's a clause within that bylaw that allows the council to place restrictions on vehicles on beaches. In terms of Makarori, this was thought about in some depth. So as I'm sure the residents are aware, we're going through a master planning exercise at the moment. I know that's been slightly delayed. There's been a wave of sickness going through both the consultants and the staff involved. So that Makarori master planning process is underway. And also we're going through procurement of the bollards to start installing the bollards at Makarori to act as a physical barrier to vehicles accessing the dunes of the beach. So the discussion and the decisions made by council when we were going through the traffic and parking bylaw process was to wait for the Makarori master plan to be complete and then move to take whatever action fell out of that process, which would be a full community engagement process and also working closely with our Mana Whenua groups. This, if you like, is almost an interim step while we're waiting for that process and the bollards to be installed, because I think, as was discussed at some length during the bylaw consultation processes, enforcement is really difficult. And I've heard your words about officers should be out there, but the only way we can take action is if we prosecute people, and we need the police involved to do that. That's really hard in terms of vehicles on beaches and managing that. So our view and our advice is that we really need some physical constraints in place, which is where the bollards come into play, to stop the access as well as the regulatory tools. Then the second question was, why not ban all vehicles on all beaches? Obviously, that's something we've not consulted on, and that could have a significant impact on some parts of the community, those that go down to the beach to launch boats, to fish. It may be something that comes into play as we go through our Tairāwhiti resource management planning process. And we're also looking at a biodiversity action plan at the moment, and the new national direction for biodiversity is about to be released later this year, and we will have to develop a regional biodiversity strategy as part of that process with the community, and that may well be something that falls out of that process in terms of looking at more wider restrictions and controls on vehicles on beaches and on dunes. I totally support the comments made about the bird species, the threatened bird species that use these habitats and their value for biodiversity, for aesthetic value, and also to protect our coast from natural hazards.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noble, because I don't recall it was so much, and the world has moved on, and I think for the submitters present, the obligations on council are a little different, but it certainly wasn't that difficult to put bollards up at Wainui Beach about 10 years ago, but there are a lot more constraints on council to make those kind of changes today than there were then. But this is something that has been sought by the community for many years, and it is frustrating for the community to continue to see the degradation that goes on and the abuse. I mean, it's nothing short of abuse of the beach and the dunes. So thank you very much for that. Is it? Yes, sure.
So, just one question. Would it not be easier to monitor having a ban of vehicles on a beach rather than imposing a speed limit? I mean, if you know, trying to monitor speed limits, whether someone's doing 20 or 30 kilometers or 40, would be a lot harder than identifying a vehicle on a beach, knowing that it should not be there. So yeah, it is a question that one would have to ask.
So yes, presence absence is easier to monitor than a speed limit. I will put aside the question of whether we have enough people on staff to do that, and then what we stop doing in order to monitor the beach daily. And then you still get to the enforcement issue. So yes, you may be able to see, yes, they were, or no, they weren't. But then enforcing that in any meaningful way, because of the way bylaws are structured and the legislation is structured, is very hard, because it means we have to take a court case. And the associated cost and burden of evidence we have to provide to the courts to show who committed the offence, and that someone just hasn't stolen someone's car or borrowed someone's car, even if we can get the license plate.
Sure, I can totally understand that, but if you know, I would suggest that a major portion of our society are law-abiding citizens. So the minority that aren't, that might do this, if there was a ban of vehicles, that, you know, I would suggest that a lot of people, a majority of people, would abide by that and not go on the beach, knowing that, you know, and it might happen over time. But if a minority were on, you know, were to still keep on doing this activity and being monitored by locals in particular, I would suggest that that would be decrease quite rapidly, even with the odd offender being caught. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I'd just like to follow it up with respect to council officers. The bollards at Wainui stopped vehicles going over the dunes and onto Wainui because that was actually what was happening at Okatū. Why do we think it's so hard to do it at Makarori, please?
To put the bollards in.
To stop vehicles being on the beach by whatever means, because that was what the intent of the bollards. They happen to be the solution for Okatū Wainui was bollards. It was, and the end game was simply to stop vehicles driving on the beach and driving over the dunes. So the end game was the same game. Why has it been so difficult? Because it's been raised in here so many times. Why is it so difficult to do the same? And I'm not saying about bollards, I'm saying stop vehicles on the beach at Makarori.
There are a few things around land ownership, and not all the lands owned by council adjoining the beach. There are some existing resource consents that allow the motorcycle racing on the beach. And in general, I've had some experience in the Bay of Plenty with vehicles on beaches. When you have a more densely populated urban area, it's easier to control access vehicles to beaches just because of the increased amount of surveillance, and you have more controlled access ways. So the further you get along the coast, that becomes harder and harder because it's just so much easier for vehicles to access and to access the beach at times when no one is looking. And just because I suppose of that culture of it being something that you are able to do and is allowed. So it's a real behaviour change as well as whatever rules or regulations.
That's my point entirely. It's a behaviour change, and we stopped cars driving over the dunes and onto the beach at Wainui, but we don't seem to be bold enough to try to stop them at Makarori, and yet we've had an enormous number of requests right down to the submissions in this. And this is not about stopping. It's actually about a speed limit bylaw that we're having a discussion today.
Yes.
As opposed to restricting them on beach, but it's something that's come out of it. Just as the first submitter's question was something that has come out of a speed limit bylaw. And we do, we have to, at this side of the table, remember what we're here for too. While we can advocate for what seems a reasonable outcome, that we have to manage the process that we're asked to do by council, which is actually the speed limit bylaw. And so we're going to have these ancillary conversations and give council officers some messages. But at the end of the day, the decision we have to take today is around speed limit and location. But it's got a good opportunity to have that wider conversation about what the community are seeking and potentially what council might be able to do about it.
Yes, thank you. And it was good to hear those messages. Again, the reinforcement does help.
Not normally, Mr. Ball, once you've had an opportunity, but since I indicated I would allow one of the ladies to, if you wish to come up, you need to come up so that it can be heard by council officers and it can be heard by the members of the public that might also be listening. So come up and if you wish to add something.
Just while Mr. Bull is approaching, what's the date on the master plan?
I was just trying to get an update. I know it's been delayed because of sickness. I haven't got that end date yet, but I can.
I'll just wait till
report back to you.
gentleman's going. Thank you for coming. Sorry, but finish. You don't have a date for the moment.
No, I know it's been delayed, so I'm just waiting for confirmation of what the likely end date is. We were hoping to report to council in August, so still aiming for that time frame.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ball.
I had meant to put in my submission, and I'm sorry I'm a bit late, but I pay great credit to the amount of effort and money and this council and previous councils have put into protecting all our other beach reserves. Waikanae, Wainui, Okatū, WD Leisner. Over the years, I can quote Okatū alone, there are 1,150 bollards from the Wainui Surf Club to the Whales Grave. In the process, the council have planted trees, they've put in concrete paths, Waikanae is a typical example of the foreshore being protected. And I can't see any difficulty in doing the same thing at Okatū. There probably are some difficulties, but that's the way it could be done. The parking areas at Waikanae are ideal, but walking access is provided for swimmers and surfers, that sort of thing. So I don't see any difficulty in the physical side of doing it. You're correct in that perhaps there is some private land involved and other bodies involved, but the main thing is to allow the public to use the beach, but not drive onto it. And what's happening in Makarori is a travesty. And some of the photographs that we have got and the photographs that we have sent to council of the damage at Makarori is horrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. The panel will adjourn for 10 minutes. Our next submitter is not due till 10:20. Mr. Kitchen's here, aren't you? Welcome. Yes. Would you like to speak now, or have you? Otherwise, we'll adjourn with coffee.
Signage, replacement road markings, publicity of any changes. Presumably it comes from the GDC transport budget, and with council having a fixed income profile, what other transport projects are to be deferred or shelved? After all, I'm not aware of any money trees growing anywhere in our district. To conclude, I wish to add the following. Early in the 2000s, there was an obituary published following the death of common sense, and it is attached. Let GDC show initiative to New Zealand by participating in the resurrection in 2022 of common sense and helping mankind get back to normality. Thank you for your time. If I could just, it's not in my submission, but following Councillor Hughes's comments in the paper on Monday night, I read into it that the decisions are fait accompli, but also that this is part of a national strategy, which means that local authorities are going to have taken away from them the ability to set their own standards. I find that most unfortunate, if that is the case, and we're seeing it unfortunately with so many others. And I do wonder, is there a fallback if you do implement it and it's found to be not successful? Is there a fallback where we can go back to the status quo? Probably not, given what was in the paper the other night.
Right. It is part of the national strategy, but there is some room for local determination, as was outlined at the beginning. And I'm sorry, we're here. We asked council officers to outline what happened. And this, at the moment, councils have bylaws and can introduce what they see as fitting and suitable for their area. But there is a national strategy to have speeds consistent across the country. But we all know that it takes an awful long time for anything like that to happen, and it may get amendments. So we do need to take an interest in what is best suited to our locality and the comments that we receive from our locals, and listen to those comments. So while council has suggested that what's in the plan be adopted, the whole purpose of the hearings panel is to listen to what the community wants. So our hands are not tied. We can make amendments if there's justified reason for that at the moment, until someone other than us decides that there will be a national strategy. You want to add anything to that, Ms. Noble?
I think you covered it very well, actually. Thank you, Councillor Seymour. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question? So it's very clear.
Yeah.
I think I did find a good question though. I was going to ask. Oh, the question you asked, which is valid, and it hasn't been, I don't believe it has been addressed, but I'll ask council officers with respect to the question about the proposal and any absence of financial cost involved. And Mr. Kitchen rightly asked what analysis had been done around that. And again, because he wasn't here at the very beginning, he might like to talk about timeframes. what, and any response you have to that question, please?
Yes, I'll speak sort of at a high level, and Ms. Middlemas can jump in with the detail if needed. So we do have a sort of a budget line that relates to road safety improvements and what's termed minor improvements. That's budgeted for. So that's set for we've now got another 2 years left of this long-term plan, which is where we set our budgets. So the intention is that implementation will be phased, so we won't do everything at once. Likelihood is that schools will be the priority. There's a lot of support in the community for those actions, and we've already started trialling and rolling out some of those variable speed limits and the like. After this hearing is concluded and we have the councillor's decision, the first step we'll take is to develop a more detailed implementation plan and phase rollout. So it is affordable and remains within budget. And then come 2024, which is when we do our next long-term plan, if additional resourcing is needed, that's when that conversation is had with the community and our councillors make a call on what is prioritised. When none of the speed limits will come into force until they're entered on a national speed limit register. So they will remain as the direction, but they won't be in force until that happens. So that can be timed along with our implementation and our funding constraints.
Thank you. Just while Mr. Kitchen's still with us, I'd just like us to speak to the issue around Ormond. And while the school itself sits on that corner of the state highway, it's not like some of our schools where their parking and entrance gateways are on the state highway. So I don't recall any submission in our papers in support from the Ormond School asking to go to 30. So can you talk to us about that comment in here that is it intended to be a proposal that a school on the state highway would go to 30k? And what feedback do we have around from any other transport operators or anyone else on such a proposal?
Not on state highway. Everything we've done excludes state highway, and I haven't heard anything back from the state highway people. I don't think they're considering that yet. They may in the future, but I've certainly not heard anything about.
That wasn't specified in the document, though, that you
The
published.
document is there's a local road just
So no.
there, and I think it's currently at 70, and it's been got down to 30 to be in line with. It's one of the things that we will get pulled up on under the new rule, but there's timelines by 2024. We need to have 40% of all schools down to 30 to 40 around them, so there's quite a tight guideline around that. Hence why we're sort of focusing on that first, and that's why our budgets and the long-term plan sort of indicated that we would need to be doing these kind of improvements.
But does that mean ultimately the state highway outside Ormond School will have to go?
No, because it's a rural school. I think they can get down to 60. So yeah, it could be a 60.
And it would be quite clearly determined that the access is off that short side road, which is only very short. You'd hardly get up to anything more than 30 in that piece of street. So I think it's good to clarify that. I don't think for a moment it would be suggesting that speed on the state highway. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very helpful.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. The meeting will adjourn until 10:30 when Mr. Cunny is the next submitter, I believe. Thank you. There's tea and coffee over there. If any of our submitters would like to partake of the tea and coffee, please feel free. This hearing of the Regulatory Committee with respect to the draft amended speed limit bylaw. We've had, for the benefit of our public who may be listening and our submitters are in the room, thank you for being patient and waiting. We have had a couple of submitters decline to come this morning. And the committee has been giving opportunity for those who have not notified whether they're here or not to be found, hence the calls that are being made. So we are trying to be fair to everyone. However, we can't go on doing that. There's one person who potentially is on their way, but we will start the summing up. So we've listened to the submitters. We've taken on board the material that's been presented to us this morning, and we'll have a second go at a summing up if new material comes from, and it's actually on behalf of the Gisborne Cycle and Walkway Trust that we are waiting. I'd like to give you the opportunity, council officers, to make any recommendations that you might make in the normal course of the event, subject to any new material that you've heard through the course of this morning. Thank you.
I'll go first and I'll let Ms. Middle jump in as needed. So from what we've heard this morning, we haven't heard anything that's changed the recommendations in terms of changing the speed limits. I think we outlined in the opening the next step, and it's already underway, is developing an implementation plan. What you may want to turn your minds to, and which would be useful, I think, to both the staff and the community, is if you have any direction on priorities for which speed limit changes, assuming you adopt them, get progressed with priority and get progressed first, because there will be some constraints to what can be delivered when. We have heard loud and clear the message about vehicles on Makarori Beach. I do have a little bit of an update on that just in terms of timing. So I mentioned the master planning process had been delayed slightly due to sickness and other matters arising. So the intention now is to run community workshops in August. So there should be communications coming out on that if you've not heard something already. So my expectation of reporting back to council in August was probably too optimistic. That was based on the old time frame. So it may not be until we have the new council on board, but those community workshops, hoping to arrange for August. Also had an indication from staff involved that excluding or restricting vehicles on the beaches is a key theme that had been coming out through the master planning work to date. So that is definitely well and truly on the agenda. Is there anything else we need to report back on? And in terms of the new area or the additional area that was raised by the first submitter this morning, that will be included in the implementation plan in terms of phasing, and we'll consider whether any additional consultation is needed on that particular area, because it wasn't included in the statement of proposal.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. Can I just ask you formally, because I know the Makarori residents would probably want to hear it, can you tell us why it's necessary to have community workshops to discuss this again, when the community has been asking for about 5 years for vehicles to be removed from the beach and for dunes to be protected?
Yeah, so it's just to ensure that we've heard for all of the community and that we're working appropriately with our mana whenua partners as well. They're not here today, unfortunately, but to ensure that their narratives and kōrero and aspirations for the area are captured. And we've also extended the master planning, so it's not just the beach and foreshore area, it also includes some of the wider context. So it's a bit of a bigger picture than just the beach, because obviously what people do in the township impacts how and why people travel to the beach and vice versa.
One of the council officers, and it's not appropriate anyway to mention the name, one of our council officers and the contractor who has been contracted to do the township plans has already held meetings with Makarori residents along exactly the same lines.
Yes, so this is a follow-on and the next step from the initial meetings that have already been had. So we're not losing that information. It's just the next step to try and flesh out what goes into that master plan.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And can I ask also in relation to that, is that was about the message of removal of vehicles on Makarori specifically. Are you including Kaiti Beach in that too, in that same kind of process? Because that's one of the other areas that's been asked about.
So it's not included in the process that we're going through at the moment, but in a way we're using this as a bit of a trial to see what we may then roll out, subject to funding and council's direction about what's a priority in other areas of our coastline.
Thank you. Ms. Middlemas, did you wish to add anything? Is that Katrina now? No. I think I see the person we were waiting for. And it's not this lady's fault. She has been summoned to fill in for one of the people who didn't appear. Thanks very much for that, Ms. Noble. We appreciate that you're doing what you're doing in the time frame that you're doing it. And I'm just asking the questions on behalf of the community who have an interest in what's happening. This is submission number, doesn't have a number, but it is a submission from the Gisborne Cycle and Walkway Trust. Please feel free to come straight to the front. We appreciate that you've been dropped into this. That table, would you please sit there, Ms. Duncan? You can, and here, you're allowed to take it off in here, it's only in the foyer. Can I just say, because it's a, you know, and please share with your colleagues that it would be really helpful to the democratic process if they knew they weren't coming, that they organised a substitute, and that would be much kinder to you. And it would be kinder to the submitters who are here on time, and it would be kinder to everybody. So just a wee message.
Sorry, it's a real slip up on our behalf today, and
It's not for you, but it's you. Please press the button, and then you, because this is recorded live, council officers are listening to it, and there could be people in the community who are interested, and they're listening to it too. So we appreciate that you personally have made time to come on behalf of the Cycle and Walking Trust. So over to you, and we're happy to hear your submission.
Look, I just am here to support the safer speed limits for our people. As you know, I've got strong links to the Netherlands, and many years ago it wasn't a safe place either. But over the last 20 years, I've spent significant time there. And the streets are designed for people, not for cars. They prioritise walking and cycling. And the safer speed limits make those communities, which are so much more dense than ours, so livable and so safe. And I can only urge that, you know, 30 or 40 years ago, the Netherlands made some really courageous decisions at a leadership level, which have changed the whole way people move. And they are just streets literally ahead of us. Some of these decisions are not easy, and all I can urge is courageous decision making from this committee and our leaders to make change that puts people at the forefront of their decisions. So if we can do that at this level and make change now for the future, we will make Gisborne a much more livable city and a nicer place for our people to hang out and be safe. I can talk to you about all the different streets, but I don't think there's any need to. It's about being courageous and having really good leadership here and making decisions for our future.
Thank you for that. Are there any similarities between Tairāwhiti and the Netherlands and the volume of people that live in towns and cities that might like, and the distances?
Well, look, the Netherlands is a very diverse place, and there's some little villages that I've spent a lot of time in, which are very similar to Tairāwhiti, you know, lots of main arterial routes and lots of little areas like Putapako and Mangapapa, Elgin, Kaiti, where all those little side streets are 30 kilometres an hour. And those streets are, the arterials are all 50 or 60 k's an hour, but and they'll all have double bi-directional cycle lanes on them. But all of those side streets are 30 k's an hour, which makes them really beautiful streets for people to live in. It's quieter, kids play on the streets, people walk their dogs on the streets. It's just really pleasant. The communities are very similar to where we live here, flat, and lots of little, you know, little side suburbs that are nice to live in.
Thank you.
It's not all big cities and masses. And
do you have any questions from Ms. Duncan?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any questions? Thank you very much, Katrina. I'm sorry that you came rushing down.
oh, look, thank you for giving me the chance to come rushing down, and I really appreciate it. And yeah,
Thank
just
you.
urge you to be courageous.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Foster, do you have any question to council reporting officers?
You asked us before to prioritise what we want, well, what we would
Listen to.
like to have with the amount of changes that are here and the areas of changing. Now, what's the process and the timelines for the priority, say priority 1. So what is the difference between priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, basically? So we can go, because if you're asking us to prioritize these are obviously going to be winners and losers. We don't like losers.
So without being in control of the budget myself, I would say priority 1 will start now.
With schools.
Yeah, with schools, assuming that's the priority. And I imagine priority 2 will begin to be woven in as well. And then priority 3 and 4, it will within those, they will themselves be prioritized. So some of those areas may still be done within the next 2 years, and others may be further away. So townships will probably happen sooner, and then it will sort of progressively go from there, really based on population and risk, the level of concern that we see from what we've heard from residents, what we see in terms of road accidents, changing land use. You'll see in some areas more houses going in where there weren't previously, all those kind of aspects. So that's what we'd be taking into account, without any further thoughts from yourselves.
Councillor Forrihinger, do you have any questions for council officers?
Yes, I wanted to just based on your closing statements. I wasn't too sure where Ms. McCallum's submission in regards to, I think it was Kaihoi Road and the Aore Patutahi. So you're generally supportive of her submission and her ideas there?
Yeah, I was unaware of that problem before. That was the first I've seen it. So it's something I'd like to take back and put through the matrix and see what the Sacred and Profits Needs tool says. And then
Can you speak up a bit, please? Put that through the matrix. Can you just explain for the benefit of everyone what that means?
So the guidance tool that helps us work out what a speed should be is based on a bunch of factors like volume and the function of the road, the how skinny it is, that kind of thing, and people being on it, and lots of factions that go into that. So there's kind of a computer modeling that we can refer to see whether it agrees, and if not, why not? So we can go back and say, well, actually there is like 20, I think she said there was 20 or so exits, entries onto that road. That kind of thing should have a say on what that limit should be. It might not be 50, but it could be like 60 or yeah, something like that, and find out what that should really be for it to be consistent across.
Thank you. Would really be interested in having that information to help our deliberations. The other question I have from staff in regards to your advice is I hear in regards to prioritization. What would be, because I'm hearing loud and clear, and I have heard loud and clear from our Makarori residents in regards to banning vehicles from Makarori, but also wider than that in terms of submissions. There were several submissions about beaches all up and down the coast or within our region. What would be your guidance in regards to and understanding that we're deciding on speed limits? What would be your guidance in regards to being able to us as a hearings committee be able to influence or make a position around that really key issue for our community?
So I would advise you to include something within your hearing report, although you won't be making a decision on it per se. You can provide some very clear direction that will go up to the council with your hear and to the chief executive on how important an issue you think this is.
Also supplementary, now I hear that you're, and I recognise that staff are doing the Makarori master plan. Can you explain to me, because there was a great picture of I really like the picture that was provided by one of the submitters of the Wainui, yeah, it was this picture here, you know, this A picture here, right? And it's and outside of the speed process, do we need a master plan in order to be able to put these signs up?
So, I mean, signs could be put up. It then becomes whether you can enforce what the sign says. If something becomes an issue, if vehicles do keep going down onto the beach and we go, oh, well, we put a sign up, but we can't actually legally enforce what the sign says, then that becomes the issue. But,
Yeah.
you know, there could be some signage that portrays the message about what is appropriate and inappropriate behaviour in the environment.
And supplementary to the direction of Councillor Forrihinger, I think the committee might be of a mind that nil speed is acceptable on Makarori Beach, which would fall within the gamut of what we're doing. So no speed. If we're only able to do a speed review, we could come up with the fact that there could be nil speed vehicles on the beach, which actually indirectly removes vehicles from the beach at Makarori.
We'd have to go back and sort of check the legality of setting a 0 speed limit in a speed limit bylaw, if you would.
We're
like
limiting the
us to do
speed
that.
to 0.
Well, I mean, we can, I'd have to go away and just, yeah, have a look at the
We might need you
legislation.
to do that, please. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine, Madam Chair. I don't have any other supplementary questions. It's more of a general statement about the nature of council, I guess, and that we're beholden to these functions, and they're imperfect functions, and they don't click in together. And it's trying to navigate those functions in order to be able to deliver for our community. Yeah, so. That was really the last statement that I wanted to make.
I think
Madam
that's a
Chair.
very valid comment on which to end the comments that Councillor Forrihinger has made, that the community have aspirations, and the community have been to this council many times with sharing their aspirations, and they are wider than just Makarori, but Makarori is the one that has been given quite a bit of attention, and we appreciate the feedback that all of the submitters have given to this speed review, speed limit bylaw. And the submitters, both here and those who may be listening at home, can be assured that the committee will take on board the feedback that you've provided to us. We understand completely that council officers' hands are sometimes tied with bureaucracy over the process by which we can bring to bear the impact that the community raised with us, or the issues that are raised with us. So the committee will now adjourn to deliberate what we can do to put into effect the submissions that have been received by this council in the course of the speed limit bylaw. We take on board, thank you, Ms. Noble, your point about potentially prioritising some of the ones that have received the most attention. And we thank all of the submitters, those who sought to present and those who simply, well, not simply, but who did provide feedback in written form. And we appreciate that it's been a long process, and that's been some consultations gone on for some time, and this is actually the final part of the process, bringing it here. What happens is the committee writes its decision based on the advice we've heard from council officers, but also endeavouring to bring into play some of the wishes of the community, because that's what the process is all about. And then it is submitted to Gisborne District Council as a full council and they adopt the bylaw. And then after that, there's still quite an elongated process before it actually becomes effective. And it will be tempered by whatever whakakotahi through NZTA implement with respect to the controlling authority that council has around speed. So we're just a small part in it, but we appreciate the part that the public play in giving us advice, and we take on board our responsibility really seriously to do the best we can to meet the needs of council, but also to meet the needs of our community. So unless there's anything further, I'll declare the hearing closed and we'll adjourn to debate how we can bring to bear what we've heard this morning in conjunction with council officers' report. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.